This person says, I used your method in doing Spanish and they're both great. Stop bad mouthing doing Spanish. It's great. It's not like Duolingo. It seems like you have a bias or something. If anything, I would recommend a beginner to start with doing Spanish, then move to your method. Here's my thing about doing Spanish. Like, the whole idea to ignore grammar, it has both positives and negatives. The positives is simply that it gets you to listening to natives directly, which is true. You do want to, if you want to get better at understanding natives in order to have a conversation with natives, of course, it's important that we listen to natives, okay? And so a lot of times grammar like the whole appeal of it is no grammar textbooks. Don't learn through grammar textbooks. We just want to immerse ourselves in Spanish. And that, it has some benefits, and it is true, okay? And that's what my own method also implements. That's what I've been saying. But inversely, the problem is that it ignores the leverage that a lot of the grammar rules have. And so if you, for example, I give this example all the time, I'll just use it again. If you're trying to learn the word presentation in Spanish, if I just said the word presentation is presentación, you've learned one word. But if I said words that end in ation in English will become acción in Spanish, just with a Spanish accent. Now you know 194, because you know presentación, you know cancelación, you know narración, you know every other word. And then with that, you can also learn that acción words turn into ar verbs to get the verbs. So to present is presentar, to narrate is narrar, etc. To cancel is cancelar. What will happen is now you have like another 194 words. And so just with two rules, instead of learning like one or two words, you just learned hundreds of words. And so, yes, you could discover that on your own by just listening to natives, but why? Why would you put in 100 hours of listening to natives and then discovering that pattern on your own when someone else could just say it directly to you, and you're still practicing the skills of conversation by listening and speaking, except now you're able to implement the leverage that those rules give you. And so this is why I found language transfer and learning the vocabulary through content so effective. It's because it directly reflected my goals. And so it's most conducive to my goals. And so that's why I criticize doing Spanish. The negatives, I haven't even gone to it, okay? The negatives is that it ignores that. And it also ignores its own advice, because it says, how did you learn as kids? How do we learn Spanish as kids? Well, you listen to natives, right? Well, guess what? What does doing Spanish do? It starts you off by speaking slow Spanish and listening to slow Spanish. But when you were little, your parents didn't speak slow Spanish to each other, or English in this case, right? They would speak native English with you. In fact, there is old parenting advice that they give, which is to not speak to your kids as though they're kids and speaking slowly, but rather speak to your kids as though you'd speak to them as a regular adult human being, because that develops their language skills better. And it makes sense because you get better at what you do. And so if someone grows up listening to slow English and baby English, they're obviously going to start speaking like that. And so growing up, that's not what happened to us though. We heard our parents and our relatives speak real English, didn't we? Or those of you who grew up listening to that, right? But you didn't listen to slow English. And so that's why you speak native English, because you grew up listening to native English. So it makes no sense to start from slow English, from slow Spanish in this case, and then build your way up to fast Spanish. Rather, you want to start off fast Spanish directly, but then if we have problems understanding it, okay, then we can go back to maybe slowing it down, but not ignoring the context and the accent, okay? Because a lot of times when you slow down a language, the person will make their accent clearer, their speed slower, of course, which is the main thing. They make their speed slower, their accent clearer, and they'll use the word in a different context, okay? And so they might not use that slang word, right? They might speak slower, of course, that's the main thing, but they might, not have that accent, right? So if someone was saying, I'm finna dip in English, okay? If you're going to study that, right? Let's say you had that's the native content, and then we had I'm going to leave, okay? Those are the two things. I am going to leave and I'm finna dip. What I'm saying is simply starting from I am going to leave and then moving way up to I'm finna dip doesn't make sense, because they're both so vastly different. And so if you want to learn, for example, the native English, well then we should listen to I'm finna dip, but we want to break it down. So we might slow it down. We might try to understand what does finna mean, what does dip mean. Okay, it means to leave. Okay, what does finna mean? It means going to. Okay, so now you understand that I'm going to leave and I'm finna dip mean the same thing. but you want to focus on that piece of content, not the slow, other piece of content that doesn't reflect the native content. It's the same idea there. I hope that made sense. Like, basically, if you want to get better at X, you should do X, right? If you want to get better at swimming, you don't swim in air like this. You go into water and then swim. Now, you might get some assistance, of course, with, floaties and stuff. But as long as you're in the water, that's all that matters. And that's the same thing. The content is the water. And so if your content doesn't reflect natives, your Spanish won't either. And that's when you get stuck in conversations. And that's when you feel like you aren't fluent. But, do whatever you want. I don't, anyone who wants to learn with any method that they want, if they prefer that method for whatever reason, go ahead. This is just for people who want to get fluent in Spanish as fast as possible and spend as few hours as possible on learning Spanish, which is why I got fluent in like 120 hours of study, or like a client I had got fluent in like 300-400 hours of studying, where the average is 600 to 750 hours of studying for conversational fluency.